In another time, there's a gap. Hi, my name is Jimmy Calloway, the host of Wednesday I'm in Love. Folks, before we get to today's episode, I just wanted to reach out, just one on one, from a person to another. Um, if you're watching this and you don't like it, fuck off. Why are you downvoting this stupid video? I'm not as mad as it sounds like. I have a headache. But all of a sudden, I get like 2 to 3 views on this goddamn thing, which frankly is too many. And then this last week's, I got 69 views. High five. 2 thumbs up. Great. 1 thumbs down. Hey, huh? Fuck you then. I don't. I'm not Seth Meyers. I don't think it's cute. All right. 2, 3, 4. Do 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 do. Beep ba 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 ba. I mean, I can't think of a single thing on the internet that I like, but I haven't thumbs down on anything ever because I'm not a fucking child. Whatever, you fucking assholes. Not you guys. Hi. My apologies for that prick. No, it doesn't really. I could not give a shit less, to be quite honest with you. When my pot get dried out, that's what I care about. But it does legitimately puzzle me at times. Not on this thing, because there's very little engagement that goes on with this. Again, wouldn't have it any other way, to be quite honest. But just in general, there's a band that I really like these days called the Gobs. And they're from Olympia, Washington. I may have even have mentioned them on this show. I don't remember if I told this story, so bear with me. But they're this little, I think they're 5-piece band, punk band from Olympia, Washington. They sound a lot like the Spits, but on repeated listenings, I definitely, there's more to them than just that, although they're very heavily influenced by the Spits, who are one of my favorite bands in the wrong way. And another thing about it's a weird thing about punk bands, because I love punk bands. And one of the sort of tenets of punk rock is to not be all, hey, I'm Davey, and I'm Jackie, and I'm in the... You know what I mean? Like, like they're the Monkees or something. Not that there's anything wrong with doing that, but the Gobs are one of these bands that there's no photos of them anywhere. I don't even know that they might purely be a quarantine band. I don't know that they've ever even played out. They don't have dates on their Bandcamp. They don't have even their names listed or who's playing what. And that's the sort of thing that I can really take my hat off to. It's only about the music, man. Totally into that. But just as a fanboy, which clearly I am, I like to know about the bands that I like. So I was Googling the Gobs, Olympia, Washington, and I will say, going into the story, there have been other bands called the Gobs, which is a thing that I don't really care about. Whenever I've been in a band, I remember when I was in the Dissimilars, we had 2 or 3 other names that we wanted but had already been taken, so we went with that, which was a fine name, but we did our due diligence. But that's not necessarily a thing I don't feel like everybody has to do. So they changed their name to the Regulars, so we became the new originals. I don't care that there's a bunch of other bands called the Gobs. I was Googling them, and the only thing I could find was somebody had posted a blog on Blogspot. Hey, this is the Gobs, and they're a band I like from Olympia, and here's one of their songs. And it was, they have a song called I'm Gonna Buy a Dog, open parentheses, so that it can kill me, close parentheses, if you needed any indication as to why I might like this band. And somebody, an anonymous person no less, left a comment. Something to the effect of, well, there's already a band in San Francisco called the Gobs, and then, must be more. And I was like, dude, you took the time out of your day, huh? Anonymously post on some guy's blog spot that I only found because I was Googling that band's name. And that's, you have to, I mean, I know I'm not the first. I'm far from the first person to say this, but um, the internet giving voice to everyone, huge mistake. Few people should have. Nobody should really have a voice. I would rather everyone just shut up. But it's just it boggles my mind, and perhaps it's just a generational thing. Last year was it last year? 2019, I believe it was spring of that year. No, it was right around. It was Father's Day of 2019, if I'm not very much mistaken. Some guys that I knew, some comedian guys, uh, had this show they did in their garage called Fun Church, which it was super. It was exactly that. I had never seen it before. They were like, "Hey man, one of the guys is sick. Can you come down and fill in for him?" And I watched a couple of the videos. And I was like, "Oh, this is great," because it was really just the three of us fucking around in a garage in West Adams, and it was a lot of fun. And they streamed it live on Twitch or whatever preceded Twitch, and YouTube also, I think. And after when we were doing the thing, I didn't know that we were being commented on the entire time. But when I went home and later and I watched the video of it on YouTube and it had all the comments, everybody's taking shots at my age, which isn't like anything new, not very original, but the sheer number of it. I mean, the amount of just old jokes, and I was like, I'm only in my early 40s. It's like, hey, it hurts my feelings. And those guys, I mentioned it to one of them, and they were like, that's just the internet. I was like, I guess so. I have, at this point, almost entirely unplugged. I have shut down all my social media, with the exception of Twitter, which I don't use. I use to write Twitter messages to comic book writers I like for the most part. Um, I don't look at my phone. I don't have any notifications on my phone except for texts. Uh, I've had it. I am done. I've been a real misanthrope my whole life. It's very much a Callaway tradition. Uh, and when I was younger, and like 20 years ago, when the internet was becoming a thing, I was like, I don't really think it's for me. And then MySpace happened, and I went, oh, this is kind of fun. And then Facebook happened, oh, this is fun too. And then I was sucked in. And then I started working in social media, and I started using the internet for networking purposes. And I would sooner put a bullet in my face before I ever use network as a verb ever again, for one thing. And for another, I've washed my hands of it at this point. There's certain aspects of my life that the smartphone has made possible that I could do without because I did before, but you know, the GPS is very handy. And I'm very used to my podcast app for the one podcast that I listen to. But the whole thing, and it's this sort of thing. I don't mean to have gotten off on this long tangent just because somebody thumbs downed my stupid video. But it just feels like you have to go out of your way to do something like that. And if you're going out of your way to do something like that, kill yourself. Do it anyway, because I'm sick of looking at you. All right. Back to Picks of the Week. First up, we have Alien number 12. I'm very much looking forward to this. I mostly just wanted to show off this Queen cover because I think it's very clever. This has been a series that I feel like people are sleeping on. This was my recommend for the shop this week, too. This is the final issue of this arc. Of course, it's at number 12, so they're rebooting it at number 1 with the exact same creative team. That's a whole nother rant. But this has been great. This arc in particular has been very fun. It takes place on a colonized world, as most of these alien stories tend to do. Because in the alien universe, that's like the thing, is that Earth is colonizing all these other planets, and then the xenomorphs show up, and all heck breaks loose. So there's this colonized planet, and they're very religious. It's not Christianity, but it's something very similar, very devout. And then the aliens come up and start eating people's heads, and the rest of everybody else is like, "Oh, maybe God doesn't exist," and that's like, well, that's exactly the kind of story I want. I also feel, and I don't, maybe people don't talk, maybe people do talk about this, and I just don't pay attention. But one of the great things about the alien world is that all of the bad shit that happens to people, like it's twofold. It's a story of man versus nature, very clearly and obviously. I mean, it's called Alien, so we're going out into the void, out into space to try to explore and find new worlds. But unlike Star Trek, we're all going to die. That's what Alien is. You go out into the unknown is going to rip your face off. And I like that kind of a story. But also, what's kind of even more evil, yeah, because the aliens are scary and evil, but they're also just doing what comes naturally to them. They're a life form, and that's how they procreate, by having acid blood and laying their eggs inside other living organisms and stuff. It's not that different from other just normal animals you find. They're just, not as scary. But I think especially with the second movie, the underlying theme of the alien stories is that corporations will kill the shit out of you in the name of the profit margin. And I think that's a message that really can't be said often enough. Every one of these stories, I can't think of a single alien story that I've read where Weyland-Yutani, the corporation that is essentially bankrolling the government at this point in the future, is directly responsible for these people getting killed by these aliens. I think even in the first movie that was the shtick, right? They're like, well, this thing's dangerous, but we can't kill it because we should be able to weaponize it. And I don't know. I don't think that gets talked about often enough. I also think that Alien comics. I don't know if I made this little speech before. I don't really like the movies that much. I've only seen up to. I saw the first four, and one of the Alien versus Predator movies. Did I see both? No, I think I only saw the one. Not that good. I don't even think the first two were that great, which everybody, loses their minds over. I was always partial to the third one because that was the first one that I saw in theaters, and that was also one of David Fincher's earlier works. On rewatch, it wasn't quite as good as I remembered it at 14, but movies aren't that great. Resurrection is god awful. Why Sigourney Weaver agreed to come back for that one, of any of them to come back for. And I haven't seen Prometheus or any of the other ones after that. Excuse me, the doorbell is ringing. Anyway, Danny McBride's in one of those movies, and I kind of want to watch it. All right, what else we got? This is Batman Fortress #1. This actually came out last week, yeah, but I missed it because I'd seen the house ads for it, and was curious. I mean, I'm done to death on a lot of Batman stories, especially because there are no fewer than 10 to 12 Batman titles on the rack at any given time. But this one in particular is interesting because the story is apparently Superman is off Earth and there is an alien invasion coming. So Batman has to be the one, and that's, on the face of it, might not be right in his forte. It's also drawn by Derek Robertson, which is the main draw. Derek Robertson, he drew Transmetropolitan with Warren Ellis. He drew The Boys, or a chunk of it anyway, with Garth Ennis. I think I actually looked into it, and Derek Robertson did draw the bulk of the series, dude. But not as much as I would have certainly liked. He's co-creator, as he should be. But yeah, he bailed out for a few arcs which was kind of a drag. And I think it was just because he does generally kind of take a little longer, I think. But regardless, that'll be a fun. And I think it's just a mini series anyway, so that'll be cool. Also, this week I got The Closet #1. This is on the Image Comics group, and this is a new horror book by James Tynion the fourth. I don't know what the other three have been up to, but the fourth one has really been knocking it out of the park lately. He's got a book right now that people are losing their minds for called The Nice House on the Lake, which is another horror book on DC, which I haven't actually read. I had meant to look him up before I did this, and I have forgotten. Boop, bop, boop, bop, boo. I also have to go to the movies, which means I have to leave myself enough time to roll a joint. But I've been following James Tynion since he broke, I want to say about 10 years ago. Let's see what else. Yeah, he wrote a lot of Batman stuff, so people are into that. Something is Killing the Children, that's also him. House of Slaughter, which I believe is a spinoff of Nice House on the Lake. I think Nice House on the Lake is him. I'm going to feel silly if it's not. Nope, there it is. Thrill as the old man looks up stuff. I want to say The Woods was the first thing by him that I had read, which I didn't actually finish. But it was about this high school that gets all of a sudden is in another sort of dimension, like the mist a little bit, where there's all these weird. It's like they're in the middle of the forest, hence the title, and there's all these strange creatures out there, and kids start getting eaten and stuff. It was very, you know, uh, Lovecraftian, Lord of the Flies sort of a thing, and I dug it, even though I did not finish it. I guess Batman is his main thing, but I know. I guess I don't know. Let me see. Boom. The Woods. I could have. Was Letter 44 or was that Charles Soule? I think that was Charles Soule. I think that's what I was thinking. Anyway. I had to flip through this and this looked pretty cool, so I thought I'd pick it up. Especially because clearly I haven't read enough Tinian at this point anyway. And that's. Okay. Excuse me. What did I? Let's go. Leslie. The Rush #6. This was great. I would highly recommend getting this in trade paperback, which should be soon. This was the final issue. I mean, there's certainly room for a sequel, but I don't know if that is in the cards or not. But yeah, really, really great stuff. Very weird Western, even though it takes place in the Yukon Gold Rush. It still feels like a Western to me. Also, Devil's Reign Omega #1, or Devil's Reign Omega, I should just say. Yeah, they didn't number it, which is good because it already has the Greek letters. So, what? Yeah, so now Luke Cage is mayor. That'll be fun. Uh, and this is going to lead into the new Thunderbolts miniseries, which is coming soon, which I am excited for because I love the Thunderbolts, which I have every single issue, if I'm not mistaken. It's one of the titles I have a complete run of. Mayor Luke Cage is a great idea. I hope that because this is the thing, and I think I mentioned this last time. This is going on while there are two other major events going on in the Marvel universe. They kind of overlap. I'd also forgotten that. So during Zdarsky's run, see how far back I want to go with this rant. I think it was in the 70s. Matt Murdock was tired of being a blind guy, especially because he wasn't actually. He's got more senses. He's traditionally blind, but he has more senses than the average person. So for a while, he had another alter ego called Mike Murdock, which is Matt's twin brother, but he could see, and he was like kind of a rough and tumble Hell's Kitchen guy. And I don't even remember how that stupid storyline ended back then. And then I can't remember if Starsky was the first one to bring it back, but I don't think so. I think they made allusions to Mike Murdock over the last few years. But during the Zdarsky run, this is something that I really love about Marvel comics in general, is that you have all these street level type heroes, and Daredevil is one of the bigger ones. But every now and again, the writers are like, you know what? There's all kinds of crazy shit that goes on in the Marvel universe. Why can't we use some of that? So at one point, I think it was an Infinity Stone, an Infinity Gem, but essentially made Mike Murdock a real guy, and he really became, and he had like this. The stone altered, the gem alters reality, so that everybody remembers it too. It's not just something that Matt made up, and people are like, "You have a twin brother?" It was something that everyone remembered, and so Mike Murdock became a real character in Daredevil. Unfortunately, met his untimely end at the hands of the Kingpin, who thought he was Matt Murdock, who the Kingpin had remembered was Daredevil. So, Mike Murdock is now out of the picture, which is a drag because I was getting to like that guy. And now the world thinks Matt Murdock is dead, and so they're gonna Daredevil's just gonna pretend he's not Matt Murdock anymore. What? Daredevil's secret identity of Matt Murdock has been secret again. Hence, this was the whole point of this this event happened because the Kingpin was pissed off that he didn't know who Daredevil was anymore. Um, so now that Mike is dead, who doesn't get a funeral, even though he's a real guy, they buried him as Matt Murdock, and then Daredevil and Elektra are going to continue their vigilantism. And their friends, like Luke Cage and those guys, are like, hey, this isn't cool. You can't do this. This isn't, but if there's anybody in the Marvel Universe who has faked his death more than Matt Murdock, I'm hard pressed to, or who has actually died and come back. But yeah, and apparently Starsky is still just going to keep writing Daredevil. So I'm like, oh, all right. This felt like the end of his run to me, which would have been decent. I mean, he has had a pretty good run at this point. It would have been like 3 years, 2 years, 3 years, I want to say. What are you gonna do? So also this weekend, this past weekend was Memorial Day weekend, and I had this incredible pain in my hip because I'm 79 years old, and so I had to lay in bed for 3 days basically. So I got a lot of reading, and I didn't finish that much. I've got like 9 things going at once, so it's kind of. But I did finish a couple things. I don't remember if I showed these off or not. This is Superman number 423 and Action Comics number 583. These were the final issues of these runs back in the 80s. This is a 2-part story. First part's in this issue, second part's in this, written by the great Alan Moore. So back in 85 into 86, the Crisis on Infinite Earths was happening in the DC universe, and so everything was getting started over. And they started Superman over with number 1. And John Byrne was writing and drawing it. Still one of my favorite runs, frankly. Well, first he did the Man of Steel miniseries, and then he started Superman number 1. So since they were doing that with the Superman books, the way I remember hearing the story, and I don't want to look it up because I want it to be true, but Alan Moore got wind of this, and he told Julie Schwartz, who was still editor at the time, that if he didn't give Alan Moore the assignment, he was going to kill himself and Julie, perhaps. Something like that. Something very extreme. And fortunately, affable Al Moore, was doing so well in Swamp Thing. They were like, yeah. And so we have, the story is called Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. It takes place in the not too distant future where Superman has been gone for like 10 years. And Lois Lane is telling the story, and it's very Alan Moore. People, like, villains are coming back, but now they're not like Toyman and the Prankster, but they're not cute anymore. They're killing guys. like a lot of people in Superman's orbit, like Pete Ross and people like that, start dying. And I don't really want to, I don't want to spoil it. It's a 35-year-old comic book, but it's basically the end of Superman. Um, Lex Luthor goes out to find the last remnants of Brainiac, and Brainiac takes over his body to try to kill Superman. Brainiac is very much his Ultron. And yeah, Superman takes everybody, Lois and Lana and Jimmy and Perry and his wife, to the Fortress of Solitude to protect them. They get attacked. They're being Bizarro is attacking Bizarro. He's such a nice man. And then it turns out that behind all of it is Mr. Mix's Spitlick, who is this affable imp from the eighth dimension. But he comes at the end of this. He's like, "No, I'm not. I don't wear a derby. I'm a demon from another dimension with the power to warp reality. You think I'm just gonna be a cute little guy with a flower?" Very Alan Moore. Very like steeped in the lore of Superman, but also very modern and gets very dark. But just, I mean, it's a great story. I've read it. This is not the first time I read it. This is the first time I've actually owned these two issues. It's been reprinted. The story's been reprinted. The first time I read it was in the collected little. It was like a little mini trade called "Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow," and it's been reprinted. Like I believe, yeah, every time they like DC has done a couple collections of all of Alan Moore's stories, which I'm sure he's thrilled with, and it never gets old. I love it. And then also I finally got to Blacksmith. This was great. How many issues is this? This is 5-issue series collected in this trade. I hope there's more forthcoming. Eric Palicki, I'd only read. He did a story. He did a book a couple years ago called "Atlantis Wasn't Built for Tourists," which was good, but it didn't like rock my socks. This, on the other hand, very much did. We have a private eye who is also a werewolf, and her partner here who's also a genie, and they investigate paranormal happenings in the Los Angeles area. Not like something that's never been done, but I still just really, really liked it. The characters are really fun. The dialogue crackles. It's a very good urban fantasy is definitely here to stay. I think even the novel that I'd written is technically urban fantasy, which is basically just uh, modern setting, but with fantastical elements. And like most genres or subgenres, a lot of it's garbage. But when you nail it, you nail it. And Palicki definitely knows how to write a private eye story, and he definitely knows how to write an urban fantasy story. So yeah, I don't know. I tore through it. Couldn't people were going gaga for it when it was coming out monthly, but for whatever reason, I just was like, I can't just pick up another title. But I did. I'll get when the trade comes out. So I finally did, and I finally read it. Can't recommend it enough. And those were picks of last week. Okay. I do apologize for getting all angry at the beginning. I do have a headache. Go thumbs down your mother.